Water, a shared resource. Both agricultural land use and urban development contribute to water quality problems and stress water resources. Tension between urban needs and rural land use can obscure the fact that both sides share many of the same concerns and goals when it comes to protecting this shared resource. Both rural and urban stakeholders are trying to protect their shared water resources from pollution. For this video, we're using the example of shared water resources of Lake Michigan and the Kankakee and Iroquois rivers. Waters like these are resources for many things, including drinking water, recreation, shipping, industry, fishing, and wildlife habitat. The issues raised here are similar in many places.
The watershed that we're in right here is ultimately the Lake Michigan watershed.
Yep, we farm in northwest Indiana, just outside of Portage, Indiana. We are about 8 miles south of the tip of Lake Michigan.
We are a diverse grain and livestock operation. We farm in northwest Indiana.
I'm a farmer here in northern Jasper County, Indiana. We farm right beside the Kankakee River.
We're all in the watershed together, and so the practices that we do on the ground impact our water quality.
One of the things I kind of point out is there's plenty enough to blame to go around, that everybody is accountable, that we all live in a watershed, and we can detect impacts from both land uses.
Farming is complex. Farmers must make complicated decisions, including which seed varieties to plant, how much to plant, and when, where and how much fertilizer to use, when to harvest, marketing and financing decisions, and more. They work to produce food while being stewards of their land. But some water quality problems are tied to farming practices. Nutrients from fertilizers and sediment from erosion can get into our waterways and cause problems downstream.
Farmers have to raise and feed our hungry selves, right? And so they got to do that, but they also got to do it in a way that's environmentally responsible. And farmers want to do that.
Seems like it should be simple. Put something in the ground, let it grow, harvest, sell it. It's not quite that simple.
For cities, causes of water quality concern come partially from stormwater runoff. Nutrients from fertilizing lawns and heavy metals and hydrocarbons from cars and roads are just some of the pollutants that run into downstream waters. Pollution from all sources can impact the quality of drinking water, close beaches, produce algae blooms, and negatively impact fish and wildlife habitat. Heavy rain and runoff can cause flooding, erode local creeks, and even cause sewer backups.
So all these things are eventually washing their way down toward Lake Michigan and creating big pollution problems.
Every year we do get a number of beach closures that occur because of high E. coli levels or bacteria levels.
This neighborhood that I live in, Chautauqua Park or Memorial in the city of Valparaiso, historically did have numerous flooding issues.
In a normal year, in a normal water situation, Beauty Creek is it's a nice babbling little creek like this, maybe a foot, 2 foot deep. And then if you just get a half-inch rain, all of that rain hits Beauty Creek and it turns into an 8 foot deep torrent.
So both the rainwater and the wastewater from the homes entered the same pipe system. So the problem with a system like that is when the rains overwhelm what the pipes can carry, backups occur.
Different stakeholders, different sources of water pollution. And yet, shared water resources can lead to a common understanding of what's at stake.
Well, the city has a responsibility. We have a responsibility by state statute, but also just a responsibility as environmental stewards to manage the stormwater runoff.
We believe that you should leave anything that you're given in better shape than you got it.
We need to do things the right way, prove that we're doing it the right way, and do it before we're told that how we have to do it.
Satisfaction of just doing my little part in my neighborhood to do some water conservation. If everyone did something like this, it could really add up.
With the goal of protecting common waters, different stakeholders address this complicated issue using a variety of practices and approaches. Farmers use different kinds of conservation practices, like cover crops, no-till, and nutrient management practices. Benefits include reducing nutrient runoff and soil erosion while increasing soil health, and in the case of cover crops, potentially providing feed to livestock. Not only do these practices help water quality, but they may help farmers' economic bottom line.
We'll have a living crop covering the ground, so there won't be as much surface runoff and sediment delivery to open water and surface waters.
In a lot of ways, they will help their bottom line as they manage nutrients and improve soil tilth. It'll improve the production of their cash crop.
We're in business to make money, but I also own the ground, and I'm a steward of the ground. I want to improve it.
I think some producers sometimes fear that conservation practices come with additional costs, but in a lot of ways they come with reducing expenses.
Urban business owners and local governments have found ways to overcome challenges to water management. Local governments promote a variety of stormwater practices to their residents, like reducing fertilizer use, disconnecting downspouts and redirecting stormwater to lawns or gardens, and picking up dog waste. Cities have also introduced best management practices like rain gardens, rain barrels, pervious pavement, and naturalized detention basins, as well as low-impact development standards to mitigate both flooding and runoff into the local watershed.
We had a water management problem, and we found an ecological solution to it in a bioswale.
All the water that comes from upstream or uphill from here goes through this rain garden, or actually is soaking into the ground, and it's being returned to the aquifer.
The nice thing about putting it in the downtown area is it's in a very visible location. We can put up an educational sign to educate the public on this type of practice. It blends well into the terrain and into the park area. It seems to be pretty well received by the public, and it has a functional benefit.
Through doing these practices, it reduces the amount of runoff.
It's cleansing the water, reducing flooding downstream, and at the same time providing us with a very attractive little respite in the middle of or oasis in the middle of our otherwise sea of asphalt.
As with agriculture, these practices come with challenges.
So public perception is a very important thing when it comes to rain gardens or bioswales. Because if the public thinks it's just a weed patch, they're not going to appreciate it. They're going to want it mowed down, removed, so that it loses its effectiveness, and they're not going to appreciate it. So you have to do things to tweak it so it doesn't look like a weed patch.
Local decision makers, the folks that are really going to help implement some of these things, are constantly on the move as well. So the education and outreach and working with folks, it never stops. So in itself, that winds up being a challenge. Another very real challenge is, and I think this is for pretty much anything anymore, is funding. Finding secure funding sources for the restoration practices that we'd like to see occurring.
It's not something that just happens. You have to explain it, and you have to present it in a way that everybody understands it.
Definitely helps to have community support.
Even local homeowners can find ways of contributing to the solution.
Sometimes living in the Great Lakes, we have this mistaken thought that water is so abundant that we don't even need to be concerned with it. So my thought was to, through a demonstration project of doing a rain garden that I might not have done myself. Rain gardens kind of serve a dual function. One is it diverts water that otherwise is just going to go into a pipe sent off to, sometimes people don't know, don't care, just get it out, to a productive use of on-site. I can have rain that lands on my roof and divert it into my backyard and use that water to keep a rain garden going. I think it's important that we do what we can.
Both farmers and urban residents share a stake in preserving and protecting our water resources. And even beyond the need for clean water, there are economic and quality of life benefits. We all have a stake in understanding our mutual interest in protecting our waters.
Stormwater is a non-renewable resource. If we don't protect what we have, we literally can't live without it.
If there's one thing that people need to know is that we're all in it together. It's the way the world functions. We need to grow the agricultural commodity, and farmers and producers are doing the best job that they can do.
The margins are pretty thin, and we have to be efficient. And conservation practices, generically, to me, mean we are being more efficient. We are conserving our resources so that we can, grow better crops.
You could save money on a lot of these practices, or the cost equals out of conventional versus low impact development. We're hoping at some point this becomes the norm. This is nothing special. It becomes a standard for everybody, and that when you develop or do something, that you automatically incorporate these types of practices into sites.
I guess the message would be just to implement your own policies within each person's respective community.
We all live in a watershed, and if we can all do what we can do and share ideas and practices and make the world and the quality of life better, I think that's what it's all about.